Micro Habits Mastery. Tiny Changes That Lead to Massive Results. Written by Ronnie Rowland. Published by Growth Literacy Lounge. Change doesn't collapse you, it slips past you. Quietly. Like the missed workout, the unspoken word, the snoozed alarm. Days don't fall apart in disasters. They drift off course by degrees. And so do lives. Most people don't fail because they lack ambition. They fail because they believe change must be loud. That real growth roars, sweats, and surges with intensity. But the truth is quieter, less cinematic. Success begins not with a massive leap, but with a shift so small it barely seems worth doing. A single glass of water. 1 minute of movement. 1 paragraph read. These tiny actions don't announce themselves as life-altering. But they are. Repeated over time, they tilt your future. You don't notice the shift at first. But 6 months from now, you're not where you were headed. You're somewhere better, because you changed direction in the smallest possible way. James Clear said, "Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become." That's the heartbeat of this book. You're not here to impress anyone. You're here to become someone, quietly, steadily, simply. This isn't a guide for doing more. It's a guide for doing less, but more often, more intentionally, and more aligned with who you're becoming. You'll learn how to start habits that are too small to fail and too consistent to ignore. No pressure. No perfection. Just progress. Chapter 1: Why Big Goals Backfire. Every January, gyms fill to capacity. Calendars overflow with color-coded goals. People vow to read a book a week, run a marathon, or meditate for an hour each morning. For a moment, it feels like transformation is inevitable. But fast forward a few weeks, and the weights collect dust, the books sit unread, and the meditation app is quietly uninstalled. Motivation fades. Life doesn't. And the bigger the goal, the faster it seems to collapse under its own weight. We've been sold the myth that success requires grand ambition. The world celebrates those who go big or go home, pushing the idea that intensity equals commitment. But in truth, intensity often disguises unsustainability. When change feels enormous, it awakens the brain's built-in alarms. Uncertainty. Risk. Potential failure. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making, goes into overdrive. Resistance sets in, not because you're lazy, but because your mind is protecting you from perceived threat. Big goals feel like cliffs. And cliffs make us freeze. Consider the person who vows to get in shape by running 5 miles every morning. That's noble. But if they've been sedentary for years, that decision requires a complete lifestyle overhaul. Early mornings. Sore muscles. Weather. Time management. One misrun quickly snowballs into guilt, then avoidance, then a quiet retreat back into old habits. The result? Not progress. Just proof, yet again, that change is hard and failure is familiar. Contrast that with someone who doesn't aim to run 5 miles but simply commits to putting on their sneakers and stepping outside. That's it. The barrier is so low, it almost feels silly. But silly is safe. And safety breeds consistency. Over time, the walk becomes a jog. The jog becomes a run. The habit evolves because it wasn't forced. It was invited. This is the paradox of big goals: the larger the leap, the less likely we are to jump. Micro habits sidestep this entirely. Instead of scaling the mountain in one day, they hand you a pebble. You place it. Then another. Slowly, you build a path instead of trying to fly. And the magic? Once the path is there, walking it becomes second nature. Research backs this up. Studies in behavioral psychology show that the most successful behavior change doesn't come from intensity but from frequency. A single, intense effort may spark excitement, but it's repeated action, even if minuscule, that wires new neural pathways. Consistency, not ambition, rewires identity. Think of a dripping faucet. Each drop, insignificant on its own. But left to drip over time, it can wear through stone. Your habits work the same way. Tiny, consistent actions shape your trajectory far more than occasional heroics. Success isn't a sprint or even a marathon. It's a rhythm, one step, one drop, one choice at a time. If you've struggled to achieve a big goal before, you haven't failed. You've just been trying to leap when you needed to crawl. There's no shame in that. But there is a better way. Micro habits don't demand that you become someone new overnight. They simply ask you to show up, briefly, consistently, without pressure. So start not with a declaration, but with a decision. Don't aim to change your life this week. Aim to change your behavior for 60 seconds today. It may not look like much, but it's movement. And movement, however small, is the beginning of momentum. Chapter 2: What is a micro habit? Imagine a man determined to write a book. He stares at a blank screen every morning, willing the words to come. But the pressure builds. 1,000 words a day. A looming deadline. Days pass with nothing written. Then he tries something different. He sets a timer for 2 minutes and writes just one sentence. That's it. No more, unless he wants to. Some days he writes just that. Other days he keeps going. 6 months later, the book is finished. Not because he forced it, but because he showed up daily. That's the quiet power of a micro habit. A micro habit is the smallest possible unit of behavior that still moves you in the direction of your goal. It's a single, laughably easy action that sidesteps resistance and builds momentum. Think of doing one push-up, flossing one tooth, or reading one paragraph. These actions sound too small to matter, and that's precisely why they work. They're too small to trigger your brain's resistance mechanisms. No stress. No threat. No excuse not to do them. In behavioral science, this is known as minimum viable effort. It's a concept rooted in the work of researchers like Dr. B.J. Fogg, who found that the key to habit formation isn't motivation, it's simplicity. Fogg famously taught students to build the habit of flossing by starting with just one tooth. Once the habit was planted, it grew naturally, without forcing. Motivation is unpredictable. But simplicity is sustainable. Micro habits operate beneath the radar of your inner saboteur. They don't awaken procrastination or perfectionism. They don't require you to feel ready. You don't have to psych yourself up. You just do the tiniest thing that aligns with who you want to become. And over time, the repetition does more than build a behavior, it builds a new identity. It may help to think of micro habits as seeds. No one expects an oak tree overnight. But with consistent watering, sunlight, and time, that tiny acorn becomes something massive. The key isn't speed, it's staying planted. Most people abandon their goals because they expect immediate results. Micro habits flip the script. They prioritize showing up over showing off. They train you to value consistency more than intensity. Consider a woman who wants to meditate daily. Rather than aiming for 30 minutes of stillness, she starts by closing her eyes and taking 3 deep breaths after brushing her teeth. It takes less than a minute. But the habit forms. Soon she adds another breath, then another. Eventually, she's meditating for 10 minutes without strain. The habit didn't just stick, it grew, because it started small enough to survive the early stages. This is the essence of micro habit mastery. Not changing everything at once, but starting with the smallest possible step that feels effortless. The brilliance lies not in the scale of the action but in the certainty of doing it. One small success, repeated consistently, changes your trajectory. If you've struggled to make habits stick in the past, it's not because you're broken. It's because the habits were too big. They asked too much too soon. Micro habits ask almost nothing, which is why they bypass your excuses. They lower the bar until it's impossible to fail, and from that low bar, something powerful begins to rise. Your task today is simple. Identify one micro habit that supports a goal you care about. Make it so small you'd feel silly skipping it. Then do it. Not to impress anyone. Not to transform overnight. But to begin. Chapter 3: The Compound Effect of Tiny Choices. If someone offered you a choice between receiving $1 million today or a single penny that doubles in value every day for 31 days, which would you choose? Most people take the million. But here's the truth: the doubling penny surpasses $10 million by day 31. Not because of a dramatic surge early on, but because of compounding. For weeks, it barely grows. But then, almost imperceptibly, it skyrockets. That's the math of exponential growth. And it's the same force behind micro habits. Change doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It whispers. A tiny choice here. A tiny action there. At first, nothing looks different. The scale doesn't move. The manuscript doesn't fill. The bank account doesn't grow. And yet, beneath the surface, the compounding effect has already begun. It's working quietly, invisibly, until one day, what seemed insignificant becomes unstoppable. A study published in the British Journal of Health Psychology observed participants who simply wrote down their intention to exercise. Compared to those who didn't, they were significantly more likely to follow through. Why? Because small acts of commitment, repeated over time, create momentum. Micro habits function like these small deposits. One healthy meal. One phone call. One deep breath. They're daily votes for a different future. Think of a plane flying from Los Angeles to New York. If the nose of the plane shifts just 3.5 degrees south, it will land in Washington, D.C. instead. That's a change of about 7 feet at takeoff, barely noticeable. But over time, that minor adjustment changes the entire destination. Micro habits work the same way. They don't change your life overnight. But they change your trajectory. And trajectory, not intensity, is what creates lasting transformation. Take a man who reads 1 page of a book each night. Just one. Over a year, that's 365 pages, roughly 1 to 2 full books. But the benefit isn't just in the reading. It's in becoming someone who reads. That identity shift then triggers new behaviors. Maybe he starts journaling. Then he reduces screen time. Each action layers onto the next, not by force, but by natural extension. The habit spreads like roots underground, weaving into other areas of life. This is the compound effect of tiny choices. Each one, on its own, looks too small to matter. But added together, they create a ripple. The ripple becomes a wave. And soon, the wave becomes a tide that reshapes your entire shoreline. That's not poetic exaggeration. That's behavioral physics. Consistency is what unlocks this force. Sporadic intensity, like crash dieting or binge productivity, never sticks. It burns hot, then burns out. But consistent micro-actions, even on low-energy days, feed the compound effect. They tell your brain, "This is who I am now." And when identity catches up with behavior, the change becomes effortless. But this only works when you trust the process. Micro habits don't offer instant gratification. They're slow, subtle, often invisible at first. But that's their strength. They rewire your life without shocking your system. 1 degree at a time. 1 penny doubled. 1 seed watered. Start today with a micro habit that feels almost laughable in its simplicity. Track it for 7 days. Watch how quickly consistency builds confidence. Watch how confidence breeds momentum. The changes may not be visible yet, but the direction is already shifting. Chapter 4: Anchor to what you already do. A man decides to meditate every morning. He sets his alarm 30 minutes earlier, downloads a meditation app, lights a candle, and sits cross-legged in silence. It lasts 3 days. Then life intrudes, he's late for work, the kids need breakfast, emails start piling up. The habit crumbles, not because it lacked value, but because it lacked a home. Change, no matter how small, needs a place to live. And the most reliable place is right next to something you already do. Micro habits are sticky when they're attached to existing behaviors. This technique is called habit anchoring, and it's one of the most powerful tools in behavioral science. Instead of relying on willpower or memory, you piggyback your new habit onto an established one. Brush your teeth, then floss 1 tooth. Brew your coffee, then write 1 sentence. Close your laptop, then do a single push-up. The anchor serves as both a cue and a container, eliminating the question of when or how the habit happens. Your brain loves patterns. It thrives on predictability. When you anchor a micro-habit to a routine behavior, you're not just adding a task, you're embedding it into the architecture of your day. Anchors work because they reduce friction. There's no need to carve out extra time or remember a new task. The habit simply becomes part of what you already do, like stepping onto a moving sidewalk that quietly takes you forward. Consider a woman trying to build a gratitude practice. She keeps forgetting to journal at night and beats herself up for it. Then she tries a new approach. After pouring her morning coffee, she writes one thing she's grateful for on a sticky note. Coffee is her anchor. The journaling becomes a natural extension. Within weeks, her kitchen wall is covered in gratitude notes, and her mindset has shifted. Anchoring also capitalizes on momentum. Existing behaviors carry energy. You're already brushing your teeth, making your bed, or locking your door. Adding a tiny action immediately afterward feels easy because the engine is already running. There's no inertia to overcome. The action doesn't need to be big. It just needs to be consistent. And consistency is born from context. The key is choosing the right anchor. It should be something you do every day, ideally at the same time and place. Meals, hygiene routines, commuting, waking up, and going to bed are all strong candidates. The more automatic the anchor, the more automatic the habit that follows. This creates a reliable loop: cue, action, reward. Over time, the loop strengthens until the habit runs on autopilot. You may think the habit is too small to matter. But remember, significance lies in repetition, not intensity. A single breath after putting on your shoes. A stretch after setting your alarm. These are the seeds of transformation. Not because they change your life in a day, but because they start to change your default settings. And when your defaults improve, everything improves. If your past habits didn't stick, it's likely they floated without an anchor. They drifted through your schedule like a balloon untethered. Anchoring ties the habit to something solid. It turns intention into execution. And execution, even in its smallest form, builds trust. Today, choose one reliable daily action and assign a micro-habit to follow it. Make it frictionless. Make it feel obvious. Then do it. Not to be perfect, but to begin forming a chain. Tomorrow, repeat it. With each repetition, the link strengthens. And soon, the habit doesn't need effort, it becomes inevitable. Chapter 5: Make it too small to fail. In a quiet office, a writer sat paralyzed by his ambition. He had dreams of publishing a novel but couldn't bring himself to start. Every time he opened his laptop, the blank page mocked him. 1,000 words a day felt impossible. Then someone offered him a challenge: write just one sentence. That's it. Not a paragraph. Not a page. Just a single sentence, once a day. It felt almost ridiculous, but he agreed. The first day, he wrote one sentence. The next day, two. Eventually, he was writing whole chapters. But it all began with something so small it felt unthreatening. That's the genius of a micro-habit done right. It's too small to fail. People often confuse simplicity with weakness. If it doesn't hurt, it must not help. If it's not a big step, it must not count. But this thinking comes from a culture obsessed with extremes. In reality, the most powerful habits are the ones you can do without thinking, without stress, and without needing a good day. They're so easy, they sneak beneath your brain's defenses. No pressure. No perfection. Just motion. Making a habit small is not about lowering standards. It's about eliminating resistance. The goal is not to stay small forever, but to start small enough that doing it becomes inevitable. A micro-habit should feel almost too easy. Fold one shirt. Do one squat. Drink one sip of water. That's the point. It's not impressive, it's executable. Behavioral scientists call this the activation threshold, the minimum energy required to start a behavior. The higher the threshold, the more likely you are to skip it. But when the habit takes less than a minute, the excuses disappear. You don't need motivation to floss one tooth. You don't need energy to open a journal and write one word. Starting becomes automatic. And once you start, continuing becomes easier. Imagine pushing a boulder. From a standstill, it takes enormous force. But if the boulder is already rolling, a gentle nudge keeps it moving. Micro habits lower the weight of that initial push. They get the boulder rolling, even if only an inch at a time. And an inch is infinitely more than zero. Consider a woman who wanted to start running. She didn't begin with a 5K or a gym membership. She started by putting on her running shoes every morning. No running required. Just the shoes. Once they were on, she figured she might as well step outside. Then she walked to the end of the block. Eventually, she jogged a little. But none of that was the plan. The plan was simply to make the first step too small to skip. The irony is that tiny habits often grow. But they grow because they're not forced to. They grow because they're allowed to. A 1-minute meditation becomes 5. A single push-up turns into 10. A 1-line journal becomes a page. But even if they don't grow, they still succeed, because they're consistent. And consistency, not intensity, is what rewires the brain. This is where many people get stuck. They wait for motivation. They wait to feel ready. But readiness is a myth. The question isn't, am I motivated enough? It's, is this so easy I can do it even when I'm not? If the answer is yes, you're on the right track. So today, shrink your habit. Make it almost laughable. If it feels too small to matter, you're close. Then do it. Not because it's impressive. Not because it moves the needle overnight. But because it keeps the engine running. Progress isn't always visible, but momentum is always valuable. Chapter 6: Motivation is overrated, design is not. At the start of every January, millions of people rely on a single, fleeting resource to fuel their transformation: motivation. It feels powerful, even intoxicating. Fueled by documentaries, vision boards, or late-night declarations, they throw themselves into diets, workouts, and productivity sprints. But then life does what it always does, interrupts. Stress returns. Schedules shift. Motivation fades. And with it, so do the habits they hoped would change everything. The problem isn't that they weren't serious. The problem is that they were depending on a fuel source that was never built to last. Motivation is emotional energy. It rises and falls like the tide. Sometimes it surges, and that can be useful. But when motivation is your only strategy, your behavior becomes unpredictable. Habits built on emotion collapse when the feeling fades. That's why successful habit builders don't chase motivation, they build systems. Systems are steady. Systems don't care how you feel. They don't rely on willpower or inspiration. They rely on design. Good design creates behavior that feels easy, automatic, and repeatable. Imagine two people trying to eat healthier. One keeps junk food on the counter and healthy food buried in the fridge. The other flips that setup. Fruits and vegetables are visible and ready, while snacks are out of sight. The difference in outcomes won't be willpower, it will be environment. One person designed for friction. The other designed for flow. Your surroundings influence your actions more than your intentions. If your phone is beside your bed, you'll check it. If your sneakers are by the door, you'll walk. If your journal is already open on your desk, you're more likely to write. These aren't signs of laziness, they're signs that your brain is operating efficiently. It takes the path of least resistance. The question is whether you've paved that path toward the habit you want or away from it. This is the essence of behavioral design, shaping your environment to make good choices easier and bad choices harder. The most effective micro-habits aren't just small, they're strategically placed. They live where they're easy to notice and even easier to do. A meditation habit that starts with sitting on the couch won't last if the couch is always covered in laundry. A reading habit won't thrive if your book is always in another room. Design removes those micro barriers before they trigger hesitation. The habit loop, cue, craving, response, reward, offers the architecture. Your environment provides the cue. The craving is the emotional association. The response is the action. The reward is how it makes you feel. Design is about optimizing that loop. You place cues in plain sight, pair habits with satisfying rewards, and reduce friction between intention and action. Done well, the habit doesn't need to be forced. It simply becomes the default. Consider someone who wants to stretch daily. Instead of relying on remembering, they lay out a yoga mat beside their bed. Each morning, they step onto it before their feet even touch the floor. It doesn't require a pep talk. It doesn't depend on feeling energized. It's just what happens next. The mat is the system. The stretch is the result. When habits are built on design, they survive low motivation days. They function when you're tired, stressed, or distracted. That's not a flaw, it's the goal. A well-designed micro-habit fits into your life without needing constant encouragement. It's engineered to succeed. So stop asking how to feel more motivated. Start asking how to make the habit easier to do than not to do. Put the water bottle on your desk. Place your vitamins next to your toothbrush. Create a system that does the remembering for you. Chapter 7: The Power of the Streak. In the early days of his comedy career, Jerry Seinfeld was asked how he managed to stay so consistent in writing new material. His answer was surprisingly simple. He pointed to a large wall calendar and said, "I write one joke every day. When I do, I mark a big red X on the date. After a few days, I have a chain. My only job is not to break the chain." That simple visual turned productivity into a game, and it worked. Over time, those XS became a symbol of momentum, and momentum became mastery. Streaks turn invisible progress into visible evidence. They transform small wins into a growing line of success, something you can see and touch. That matters more than most people realize. Our brains are wired to respond to progress. A visible streak activates the reward centers, creating a positive feedback loop. The more you see yourself succeeding, the more compelled you are to continue. It's not just about achievement, it's about identity reinforcement. Each mark is proof, this is who I am now. The beauty of a streak is that it celebrates consistency over volume. Whether you write 1 word or 1,000, the X goes on the calendar. Whether you meditate for 30 seconds or 30 minutes, the streak lives on. This removes the pressure to perform at a high level every day and replaces it with the satisfaction of simply showing up. Showing up is the hardest part. Once you're there, action often follows. Consider someone who wants to build a daily reading habit. She doesn't aim for chapters or time limits. She just wants to read 1 paragraph a day. After each reading session, she colors in a square on a habit tracker. A few days in, the row starts to grow. 10 days later, it's a line. By the 3rd week, it's a chain she doesn't want to break. Some days she reads more. Other days, just a paragraph. But the streak stays alive, and with it, the habit deepens. There's also a psychological safety net built into streaks. They reframe success as continuation, not performance. This helps quiet the perfectionist mindset that says, if I can't do it right, I won't do it at all. With a streak, doing something is always better than doing nothing. The floor is low, but the impact is high. That's the perfect environment for micro-habits to thrive. Technology makes streaks easier to track than ever. There are apps that gamify the process, turning habit formation into levels, achievements, and trophies. But even a simple paper calendar can be powerful. What matters is that you see your effort accumulating in real time. That visible trail of effort sends a message to your subconscious. I'm someone who follows through. However, even the best streaks will one day break. Life will happen. You'll miss a day. The key is to avoid breaking twice. 1 missed day is a blip. 2 in a row is a pattern. Plan for failure by having a fallback version of your habit, a micro step so small, you can do it even on your worst days. 1 breath. 1 sentence. 1 stretch. That's all it takes to keep the chain going. Start your own streak today. Choose 1 micro habit and 1 simple way to track it. Draw an X, fill a square, or tap a button. Watch it grow. Let the visual remind you that progress is happening, even when it feels small. And with each new mark, you're not just maintaining a habit, you're building a streak that tells a deeper story. I don't need to be perfect. I just need to keep going. Chapter 8: Build identity, not just behavior. A man decides to quit smoking. He's offered a cigarette and replies, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." His words reveal a struggle. He still sees himself as a smoker, just one who's resisting. Contrast that with someone who says, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker." That's identity speaking. One is attempting change. The other has become it. This subtle shift in language reflects a deeper truth. Lasting change isn't just about what you do, but about who you believe you are. Behavior follows identity. People act in alignment with how they see themselves. If you believe you're disciplined, you're more likely to follow through. If you see yourself as someone who always quits, your actions will reflect that story. Micro habits work not just because they're easy, but because they slowly edit your identity. Each tiny action casts a vote. Each vote reinforces a belief. Over time, the belief hardens into identity, and identity drives behavior automatically. It's a loop. Identity shapes habits, and habits reinforce identity. This is why micro habits are so powerful. They don't require you to overhaul your life. They only ask you to act like the person you want to become, even in the smallest way. Want to become a reader? Read one paragraph. Want to become fit? Do one push-up. It's not about the outcome, it's about becoming the kind of person who does the thing. Think of identity as a sculpture. You don't carve it in one strike. You chisel it, bit by bit, action by action. Each micro habit chips away at the marble, revealing something underneath. The process feels slow because identity doesn't shift overnight. But when it does, it becomes a foundation. You no longer need to convince yourself. You just act in alignment with who you are. Consider a woman who wanted to become more confident. Rather than trying to overhaul her life, she began with one small act, making eye contact with one person each day. That was it. No speeches. No workshops. Just one brief connection. Over time, that act became a signal. A signal that said, "I'm someone who engages." From there, her self-concept began to shift. Her behavior followed. It didn't start with confidence, it started with a micro-action aligned with a new identity. This approach removes the pressure to perform. You don't need to be the best, the fastest, or the most consistent. You just need to act in accordance with the identity you're building. Every time you complete your micro-habit, you reinforce that identity. Not perfectly. Not permanently. But enough to shift the trajectory. The mistake many people make is chasing goals without aligning identity. They set targets: lose 20 pounds, write a book, save $10,000. But without a shift in how they see themselves, they sabotage progress. Goals are temporary. Identity is enduring. When you build your habits around who you want to become, you tap into a much deeper source of motivation. You're not just chasing results, you're living in alignment. So ask yourself, who is the kind of person that would do this habit? Not the outcome you want, but the identity behind it. Then act accordingly. Do the micro habit not to get somewhere, but to be someone. Each time you do it, remind yourself, this is who I am now. Not someday. Now. Chapter 9: Troubleshoot Without Quitting. She had gone 21 days without missing a workout. Each day, just 10 minutes. Nothing heroic, just consistent motion. Then one morning, she overslept. The workout didn't happen. That evening, guilt crept in. The streak was broken. The next day, she told herself she'd make up for it with a double session. But she didn't. By the third day, the habit felt fragile. By the fourth, it was gone. What derailed her progress wasn't the missed workout, it was the story she told herself about it. That it meant failure. That all was lost. That missing once meant starting over. It didn't. Perfection is a myth that poisons progress. We imagine successful people never miss, never slip, never fall behind. But real mastery comes from knowing how to bounce back. The truth is, every habit will be challenged. Life will interrupt. Plans will unravel. The question isn't if you'll break the chain. It's how quickly you'll repair it. Missing one day isn't the problem. Missing 2 in a row is where momentum starts to die. Micro habits are built to withstand life's unpredictability. But even they need a strategy for recovery. The first step is reframing failure. Missing a day isn't a personal flaw, it's a data point. It tells you something about your environment, your rhythm, or your assumptions. Use it. Examine it. Did you forget? Were you overwhelmed? Did your anchor break? Identify the cause without shame. Guilt drains energy. Curiosity fuels adjustment. The second step is having a fallback habit. A micro version of your micro habit. Something so small it can survive even your worst days. If your usual habit is 10 push-ups, your fallback is 1 wall push-up. If it's 10 minutes of journaling, your fallback is writing 1 word. These backup versions exist for one purpose: to keep you in motion. Progress doesn't require perfection. It requires persistence. A man once committed to writing daily. Some days he wrote entire pages. Other days, just a sentence fragment. But he kept the streak alive. His rule was simple: never miss twice. That boundary created a safety net. 1 miss was allowed. 2 meant a correction. Over time, that rhythm built resilience. He didn't aim to be flawless. He aimed to return quickly. Resilience in habit formation is about designing for failure, not pretending it won't happen. Build your system with interruption in mind. If you travel, bring your habit with you in portable form. If your anchor disappears, have a secondary one ready. Treat your habit like a living thing that needs flexibility to thrive. Rigid structures break under pressure. Flexible ones bend and return. Another key is to separate identity from performance. Missing a habit doesn't mean you're not disciplined. It means you're human. Remember the identity you're building. You're not someone who never misses. You're someone who always returns. That mindset keeps the door open. The habit isn't broken, it's paused. And pausing is not quitting. You may also find it helpful to track recovery. Put a gold star not just on days you complete your habit, but on the day you come back after missing. Celebrate the return. Reinforce the story that you are the kind of person who begins again, no matter how small the restart. The path to mastery is not a straight line. It's filled with dips, delays, and detours. What matters is that you know how to rejoin the trail without shame. Micro habits make that possible. Their simplicity allows for quick returns. Their design makes them hard to abandon completely. Their strength is not in perfection, but in their ability to continue after interruption. Chapter 10: When Micro Grows into Macro. He started with a 1-minute walk. That was the rule. No running. No pressure. Just put on sneakers, step outside, and walk for 60 seconds. At first, it felt pointless. Too small to matter. But he kept doing it. 1 minute turned into 5. 5 turned into 15. Within 2 months, he was jogging 3 miles a day, not because he forced himself, but because the habit expanded naturally. What began as micro had become macro. But the growth wasn't the goal. It was the byproduct of consistency. Micro habits aren't designed to stay small forever. They're designed to start small enough to stick. Once they're rooted, they tend to grow, quietly, gradually, and without resistance. Like a vine climbing a wall, they don't need to be told where to go. They just need space to move. The purpose of starting with a laughably simple action isn't to remain there, but to build a pattern. Patterns become rhythms. Rhythms become rituals. And rituals eventually scale. But this expansion can't be rushed. The strength of micro habits is that they never ask for more than you can give. They succeed because they bypass the inner voice that says, "That's too much." When you start demanding more too early, that voice returns. The habit becomes a chore again. Growth must feel like a natural next step, not a new obligation. Think of a plant. You don't pull on the leaves to make it grow faster. You water it, place it in the sun, and wait. Growth happens invisibly at first, roots spreading underground unseen. Then, one day, a shoot breaks the surface. Micro habits work the same way. The real change is often happening beneath the surface, in the rewiring of identity and the softening of resistance. When growth appears, it's simply revealing what's been building all along. It's important not to confuse growth with success. A habit is successful the moment it becomes consistent. Whether it stays small or expands doesn't determine its value. The man who does one push-up every morning is succeeding. The woman who writes one sentence each day is succeeding. If they never do more, they're still reinforcing identity, building momentum, and shifting trajectory. That is enough. However, if you notice yourself doing more without trying, lean into it. Let the habit evolve. But don't set new demands. Don't shift from at least one sentence to must be a page. Let the page be a bonus. Let the run be a surprise. That way, the baseline remains manageable, even on hard days. The habit survives, even if the extra effort doesn't. This flexibility is what makes micro-habits sustainable. They adjust to your energy, your schedule, your season of life. On good days, they stretch. On hard days, they contract. But they always remain. And from that consistency, something powerful begins to grow, not just in the action itself, but in the confidence it creates. You begin to trust yourself again. You begin to expect follow-through. One of the quiet joys of micro-habit growth is that it often catches you off guard. You realize you're doing more, not because you planned to, but because you wanted to. There's no internal battle. Just curiosity, momentum, and flow. That's when you know the habit has taken root. It no longer needs discipline, it has become a part of who you are. Growth doesn't need to be forced. It needs to be allowed. Your job isn't to stretch the habit, it's to protect it. Nurture it. Stay with it. If it grows, celebrate. If it stays small, honor the consistency. Both are victories. Chapter 11: Habit Layering for Life Domains. He began with just one micro-habit, writing down a single expense each night. That small act made him more aware of his spending. Without realizing it, he started skipping impulse purchases. Then he began reading one paragraph a day from a book on personal finance. Soon after, he set a 1-minute timer each morning to review his bank account. None of these habits were overwhelming on their own. But together, they created a ripple. What began as one act of awareness became a layered system of growth. And it didn't just change his finances, it changed how he thought about discipline, attention, and control. Micro-habits don't have to stay confined to one corner of your life. In fact, they work best when they're layered across multiple domains. When small wins stack, they begin to multiply. A habit in one area boosts confidence in another. This crossover effect is subtle, but powerful. One win with fitness leads to better food choices. A reading habit builds patience that spills into parenting. A gratitude practice softens conflict in relationships. Micro-habits are modular. They can be arranged, stacked, and expanded like building blocks, each one reinforcing the next. The key to successful habit layering is sequence, not scale. Most people try to change everything at once. They overhaul their mornings, eliminate bad habits, and chase 5 goals in 5 directions. But layering works best when it starts with a single thread. You begin with one micro-habit. Once it becomes stable, meaning you can do it without friction or forgetting, you add another. Not before. Not during. After. The foundation comes first. Think of your life as a garden with different beds: health, relationships, finances, creativity, work, and emotional well-being. Each one benefits from careful planting. Start with one. Tend it with consistency. When it shows growth, plant the next. This creates a natural rotation of attention, avoiding burnout while maximizing traction. You're not scattering your energy. You're redirecting it in waves. For example, in the health domain, begin by drinking 1 glass of water when you wake. After 2 weeks, add 1 stretch before breakfast. In relationships, start by sending 1 text of appreciation each day. Then, later, commit to 5 minutes of uninterrupted listening during a conversation. In the productivity domain, begin with writing down your top task each morning. Once that's a groove, add a 1-minute review at day's end. The beauty of micro-habits is that they demand so little time, you can stack them without crowding your day. But there's a caution here: never stack for the sake of stacking. Each new layer should feel light. If you notice resistance, scale back. The goal is not to become a machine, it's to become more intentional. Growth that feels like punishment never lasts. Growth that feels like progress becomes addictive in the best way. Track your layers. A simple matrix works: domains down one side, micro habits across the top. Visualizing the spread reinforces how your small efforts are shaping a larger transformation. You're not just adding behaviors. You're architecting a lifestyle, one habit, one domain, one choice at a time. When layered with care, micro habits create a kind of harmony. You start to feel less scattered, more grounded. Each part of your life begins to reflect quiet discipline. You no longer need massive overhauls. You just need to keep planting, watering, and adjusting. This is how sustainable transformation happens, not through sudden breakthroughs, but through slow alignment. Take care and be well.